Hey everybody, welcome back to our little show called the Ike and Larry Show. I'm Ike and
I'm Larry.
Larry next door on the screen. This is episode number 18. Can you believe it? If y'all don't start subscribing and our numbers don't go up, this show is going to go down the drain pretty damn quick. So you people better get off your ass and start liking the show. Today's topic is a weird topic, and I don't really know. The more I delved into it, the more confused I am, and the more I really don't understand.
It's an interesting one.
There's a lot of videos out on this, and a lot of oddly enough, I've never even heard of it. Have you ever heard of this? What are we going to talk about?
I had a vague recollection of hearing something about it, but I didn't know any details until I started delving into it, and it's different.
There's like tons of YouTube videos and like Discovery Channel and History Channel. Everybody's seems to have a little show on this thing. So I tried to go through a bunch of it and kind of weed out some of the nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense too, and there's a lot of people that just write real flowery. You know what I mean? Flowery, just using stupid words. You know, speaking of writing in decent, understandable words, you know, this is what I'm talking about right there. He doesn't need to add no flowery big words to impress anybody to see how educated he is. He just writes a good damn story. And some of these stories I come across, and I actually got one here. I'm going to read off a little bit. It's just stupid. But we're going to talk about something called a black pyramid or dark pyramid in Alaska. And hey, why not? Right? We talk about everything else, and it's got Alaska. It's got a paranormal slash Sasquatch slash UFOs slash maybe just nothing to it.
And Alaska's been known for years as being a very mysterious place where things happen that folks just can't explain. Absolutely.
The Alaska Triangle. Huge number of people get lost out there. I may have the stats here as we read through this, but I want to say about 1,500 people get lost in Alaska annually. And some of them are never found or just mysteriously disappear. The Alaska Triangle loses more people than any other place on Earth. And it has somewhat of it doesn't make sense in a way that Canada has just as much wilderness, and there's plenty of places in this world that has wilderness, but for some reason this place in Alaska, people disappear, and it has a lot of ties to Sasquatch. It seems like there's a lot of Sasquatch stories up there. So you ready to start this little adventure down this rabbit hole?
Rabbit hole. It is a rabbit hole. But yeah, have at it. Let's start talking.
So, and I'm going to paraphrase some of the stuff that's written on here because I just don't like it. So deep underground in the Alaskan wilderness lies a black pyramid which is concealed by a top secret government facility, supposedly. Ex-counterintelligence agent Doug Muchler, and he was a intelligence army or Air Force intelligence. I think Air Force or Army.
Actually, no, he was Army. Army. And I'm laying odds he was with DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, or Army, just flat out Army Intelligence, one of the two.
So back in 1989, and I've read a different story on this that made more sense. I don't know if you people know who Linda Moulton Howell is, but she's a really good investigator. She's been around forever since the Art Bell days, and she does a lot of before she publishes any story, she really does her homework. And I got across one of her articles, but I wasn't able to print it. But it's better than what I'm reading here. And she investigated this Doug Muchler also, and he provided identification and a DD-214 form, which is the exit paperwork out of any military branch that kind of proves what you've done and where you've been and all that stuff. And he did check out. He was a military intelligence officer, and he was transferred to a base in Alaska. And while there, he was supposedly looking at maps of the area to familiarize himself with the terrain, and come across a white spot on the map in the Denali National Parks area, which is huge if you've ever been up there. There was one spot that was kind of whited out, and it said uncharted, or not uncharted, but undocumented, or what was it called?
Unsurveyed, yeah.
Unsurveyed, probably, yeah. And he found that very strange because this is 1989, and pretty much all of Alaska has been surveyed. There are no places in Alaska that have not been surveyed or are uncharted. So he became very suspicious about the whole situation. He wanted to find out what's going on. So let me see where we're at here. I'm kind of reading over what I just said. Not surveyed area. So you fast forward to 1992, and it's supposedly China, or not supposedly, China did, had set off the biggest ever underground nuclear explosion. It was supposedly 70 times larger than the atomic bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima. And the shock waves were reportedly felt as far away as Alaska and picked up by earthquake analyzing equipment. Mm-hmm. And apparently a local TV station actually ran a story on the 6 o'clock news up in Alaska about the earthquake or the seismology, the tremors being felt from the atomic bomb being exploded in China all the way in Alaska. And if you know how seismology works, is sound waves travel through the ground at different speeds depending on what media it goes through. And that's kind of how LIDAR works, or underground LIDAR. So the shock wave, as it was coming through the ground into their equipment, kind of went around something in some structure underground, triangular shape, pyramid shaped structure. And apparently the news had this on saying that seismologists have discovered a pyramid-shaped structure underground in this area in Alaska. And this Doug Mutchler guy, who's seen the newscast, apparently was with a bunch of other soldiers who also seen it. They were all like in the day room or the break room or wherever the heck they were at in the base when they seen that news report. And this guy being an intelligence officer, he kind of put two and two together. He goes, I wonder if this pyramid-shaped thing is where that blank spot on the map was. And he does some research, and then he finds out, yeah, sure enough, this thing is right where this blank spot on the map is. That's kind of strange. Let's see. This pyramid is supposed to be larger than the one in Giza, eclipsing it by almost 70 feet. Its position correlated exactly with the whiteout area on the map. That's what Doug told that Linda Moulton Howell. I keep wanting to call her Howell, but I think it's just Howell. Let's see. So the same evening, the agent Mutchler wanted to record this news broadcast at the 10 o'clock news. So he set up a VCR and he waited for the 10 o'clock news to come on. And the 10 o'clock news never said anything about it. Never even mentioned it again. He thought that was kind of odd. That should have been a really, really big story. I mean, it is a big story. When the news tells you they just found an underground pyramid, you think that'd be all over. And he found it out at the 10 o'clock news, didn't even mention it. So he decided the next day to go down to the news station and see if he could get a copy of that report or something. And he used his credentials as an intelligence officer, to snoop around in there. So he goes down to the radio station and he talks to the manager, the program manager. And he said, at first the program manager says, we didn't run such a story. And the guy goes, you're full of shit. I've seen it. And all the guys I was with, they all seen it too. And he goes, well, the news manager's kind of making a story. He goes, well, we made a mistake. And we pulled it and destroyed the tapes because it was nonsense. And they didn't, they thought it was all fabricated. So nobody wanted to tell him anything. And as he's walking out, one of the reporters kind of calls him over and says, no, we really did run that story last night at 6 o'clock. And not too long afterwards, some guys showed up, apparently the guys in black suits.
That's what I was wondering.
Showed up and told them they want all the tapes of that evening broadcast, and pulled the manager aside and said, this is based on national security and has to do with the Chinese nuclear blast. And it's sensitive material, and they should not talk about it anymore. If they do, they could be charged with high treason or any of those crimes against America. And the program manager goes, no, don't want to do that. And kind of almost bought into it. and said, well, the whole pyramid thing on the ground, where did this come from then? And the guys in black, we just call them the men in black, told me, that's just, don't worry about it. Don't talk about it. Don't mention it anymore. Brief your staff. Your staff is not to talk about it anymore either. It's just nonsense. They kind of tried to wash it off like it was just a fun little story that they accidentally ran, and it was, nothing was real about it. Well, the real thing is that Muchler was real. The Chinese explosion was real. So the only thing to prove is there was actually, did they actually see a pyramid type structure underground? Let's see, where are we?
Question for you.
Go ahead.
And I might have missed this. Did you say that Muchler's bosses told him not to talk about it, or did his command ever say anything to him about it?
Not yet. I don't think his command knew anything about it. They didn't know what he was up to just yet, because he just seen the news broadcast at 6 o'clock, wanted to record it at 10 o'clock. It didn't come back on. Next morning, he went over to the TV station and tried to get a copy of what's going on, and they kind of refused anything and denied everything. Let's see. So one of the news guys, as he was leaving, kind of motions him over. It just seems kind of far-fetched, but I guess maybe not. Especially since you've been warned not to talk about it. But on the same token, that news guy probably didn't encounter the wrath of the men in black. He only had his station manager say, "Dude, don't talk about this anymore. It's national security," or something like that. So anyway, this guy calls him over and told him that, yes, we did run this story at 6 o'clock on the evening news last night, and we were advised not to talk about it anymore, and pulled the tapes. And some guys showed up from some unknown government agency and collected everything about this story and all our tapes, and they're not supposed to talk about it anymore. So he's like, okay, why the big secrecy? If there really was a giant pyramid underground that was discovered by seismology, so what? Let's dig it up and find out what's going on. Well, why do you have to make a big secret out of it?
Well, government does like to make secrets about a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, UFOs I could probably understand, but unless there's more to that pyramid, unless they can do stuff that could affect the outcome of everything. Let's see. It kind of repeats itself here a couple of times. I'm trying to skip that.
I have some thoughts on this, but I'll wait till you finish the story and give you my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, I'm passing by me out here. So let's see. I'm just trying to move up here. A year passed, with the event still whirling around in Doug Muchler's head. And in 1993, he made the pilgrimage to Fort Meade in Maryland, the home of an extensive collection of military records. So years gone by, he goes to Maryland, and they archive kind of everything over there, just like on Indiana Jones with the Holy Grail and all that stuff. So he used his credentials again to get into the archive building. He was assigned over there, not to the archive building, but he gets his way into the archives and uses credentials. And he's trying to pretend that he's doing some archaeological research. He's not going in there looking for any kind of dark black pyramid or anything like that. He's just looking for any kind of weird archaeological activity in a certain area in Alaska, in the Denali National Parks area. The guy working at the archives pointed him in the right direction and got him into a folder that was marked Alaska folder, and so Muchler takes this folder and he sits down at a table and he starts going through it, and sure enough, it's right about the area that was whited out and some weird activity. But moments later, 2 conspicuous-looking guys came over and said, "You're not authorized to have that," before grabbing the papers of the almost 2 decades old document. What?
Yeah, it's kind of a poorly worded spot right on there. But
Yeah,
I think what it's trying to say is the guys came and grabbed him and said, "You can't have it." Um, I'm not sure what they are saying, except 2 decades later is when he reached out to that Linda Moulton. How?
right.
It's kind of how I
And
read it.
to cut to the chase on this whole useless paragraph, is supposedly two guys came in while he was looking at this folder, and they told him, you don't have clearance to look at that kind of material that's classified, and took it from him. And he's kind of making a fuss about it. He goes, "Why? I mean, what's the big freaking deal?" And those guys said, "Well, they wouldn't like us knowing this or messing with it." And he's thinking, like, "Who's they?" Let's see where we're at here. And they basically kicked him out of there. They said, "Yeah, this is classified material. Stay the hell out. That's none of your business." So once again, that's very suspicious if it's true.
And I'm just going to throw my 2 cents worth here on this. I've got a couple other thoughts that I'll bring up when you're done. But I got to say this right now: if it was so classified, how did he get to it so easily? I mean,
Yeah.
he just walked in. The guy showed him a file. He was looking at it. If it was that deep and it was that dark, how was the clerk that allowed him in able to get to it so easily? Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know. Unless, they classified it. I'm sure they classified all kinds of things they don't really just put on the back burner. This may be important in the future, and right now we don't know what the hell it is. Let's see. And once again, is Linda Moulton Howe, who he contacted her, and she did her investigative work. I mean, she corroborates most of this stuff. But then she's also looking at it, although she's a really excellent reporter and investigator, she's also very biased because she's always looking to prove what's being reported to her. So it's kind of, so she gets a call from this guy, and I don't know what year. It's probably, like I said, a decade later, 10 years later. The structure has never been found, by the way. So speed up the clock, and here's the deal with this guy that disappeared out there. A small single-engine float plane delivers 40-year-old Nathan Campbell deep into some of the wildest country in the heart of Alaska in May. He confessed to the pilot on the way that he was on a quest to find the lost pyramid of Alaska. Okay, that'd be something like I would do. I'll be back tomorrow. And no one has seen him since. When the National Park Service officials were finally notified he was missing in September, they launched a search and rescue to the remote northwest corner of Denali National Park and Preserve. Campbell was an Alaskan native, used to the outdoors, did a lot of hiking, camping, was married, had kids, and he also carried a GPS locator with him and a satellite phone. So it's not like he was totally unprepared and just jumped out of a plane with a knapsack. They found the supplies Campbell had stashed at Carey Lake, where the float plane had dropped him. And some miles away was a collapsed tent. In the tent was the tattered diary that appeared to have been chewed on by rodents. I guess the rodents will do that after a while. The diary provided little in the way of clues as to what happened to the man who called Wasilla his home. It generally recorded the average day-to-day chores of life in camp, according to authorities. I think he was going to stay out there like 2 months. He was planning on staying out there for a while.
Well, and Wasilla's in Alaska, so he obviously knows the terrain. He knows what it takes to survive. So,
yeah, there's to kind of make it easier to understand, though, because the national park is huge, and you can literally find yourself 100 miles away from a nearest residential road. It's insane, and it's huge. The last entry in the journey recorded that Campbell left his tent to get water. Denali Chief Ranger Erica Jostad said today, weeks after Rangers found a diary, Alaska State Troopers slipped Campbell onto the register of those missing in Alaska. There's a little bit of stuff I came across this whole situation. Like, one, why wasn't he searched for earlier? There was a lot of things going on because he stopped communicating with his wife, and she immediately reported it. And they just said, well, maybe he doesn't want to talk to you. Just left it at that. And she already had a really bad feeling something happened to him. Two is, why was his camp so far away from the water source? As an experienced bush person in Alaska, that's something you usually don't do. You don't want to hike freaking 2 miles to get a glass of water.
Right.
And there were some things that didn't add up. The bush pilot kind of refused to go out there and look for him, and his wife called him and said, you may want to fly out there and just check on him. And he's like, well, there's really no place I can land at the time, so why don't you contact a helicopter company, have them go out there. So there's a lot of blaming going on, and really there's nobody to blame but the dude who went out there by himself anyway.
Huh?
Let's see.
But there was no evidence that anything went wrong. It was just a tent that had been battered by the weather after he'd been gone for so long, but there's no evidence of any foul play or anything.
He was never found. I mean, which is really strange because, once again, if it was predation, if he was attacked by a grizzly out there, there'd be parts and pieces of his clothes somewhere, boots, a cap, jacket. That stuff doesn't break up. I mean, that stuff doesn't decompose very quick. I mean, a jacket lay out there for 20 years, yet nothing's ever been found. I mean, once again, like we've said a million times before in the show, mysteriously disappeared. No idea where.
Mm-hmm.
In this remote region near Juneau, Alaska, an astonishing number of people, estimated at 20,000 since 1970, have vanished. Could you imagine 20,000 freaking people since the 70s?
They vanished. No body recovered. No evidence of what happened. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah.
With an average disappearance rate of around 2,250 people yearly. So I was being conservative when I said it was around 1,500. They're saying 2,250 people disappear yearly out there in Alaska.
Yeah, I'm going to pack my stuff and head right up there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to go motorcycle camping by myself out there. May not come back. That's just seems like an extraordinarily large number, and I wonder how accurate that number really is. If that's just people that run away or lost and get found, get searched and rescued,
mm-hmm.
or if that's people that just disappeared. Geographically, the Alaska Triangle spans between Anchorage and Juneau in the south to Utqiagvik, formerly known as Barrow. It's not called Barrow anymore. On the northern coast. That's
mm-hmm.
a huge triangle, by the way. Prominent figures such as House Majority Leader Hale Boggs and Congressman Nick Bigick disappeared in 1972 while flying from Anchorage to Juneau. Wow, some congressmen disappeared. Despite extensive search efforts, including for the missing plane and its occupants, pilot Don Yonts and Russell Brown, their bodies or wreckage were never found. It says ever found, never found. The mysterious circumstances surrounding Boggs and a member Warren Commission. That makes no sense.
The Warren Commission, yeah.
Yeah, the Warren Commission fueled conspiracy theories. So, in a nutshell, 2 famous people disappeared out there in an airplane and have never been found. And that's another one. There's some really crazy numbers about lost airplanes out there. Although, I think the people owning it's 6-1 compared to the lower states. There's so many people owning small aircrafts out there because in a lot of places that's the only way you can get around.
Yeah.
But there's an ungodly amount of small aircraft that just disappear. And I know the response would be, well, it's a big ass place, but because there's so many airplanes, people would fly around all the time, and you would see wreckage on the ground. Airplanes, leave holes, leave craters. They leave a debris field, the wings, parts, pieces everywhere. Fairly easy to spot from the air. And because everybody has an airplane down there, you would seem to come across all these missing airplanes fairly easy. But they don't. These airplanes just vanish.
Well, yeah, I mean, you compare that with like the jungles of Borneo, where aircraft from World War II have went undiscovered for decades, but they're also covered in heavy tropical foliage. They don't know if they have as much of that up there. They've got forests, but they've also got a lot of snow areas. So,
and they also have a lot of tundra type or steppe type areas where it's, it's just shrubbery type stuff, where stuff disappears. It's just, it's puzzling. Another puzzling case involves Gary Frank Sutherland, a 25-year-old New Yorker who disappeared during a hunting trip in the Alaskan wilderness. In the mid-1970s, he disappeared in the mid-1970s. In 1997, a human skull found along the Porcupine River was later identified as Sutherland's through a DNA analysis in 2022. So basically, they found his head many years later. 80, 90, 20, 27 years later, they find the skull, and through DNA, they find out it was the guy that was missing. What is the secret behind the Alaskan Triangle? The Alaskan Triangle perceived connections to the supernatural, and conspiracy theories is extensive. Sightings of UFOs, ghosts, and aggressive Bigfoots or Yeti-like creatures are frequently reported. Various explanations for disappearances range from electromagnetic disturbances affecting compasses to alien abductions and encounters with a man-eating monster known as a Wendigo. I thought a Wendigo was more of an East Coast Native American thing. A mythology being with roots in the folklore of Algonquin First Nations tribes. That's Canadians. But so the supernatural and paranormal up there in Alaska has always been a thing. There's tons of that up there, UFO sites. I'm going to finish reading this whole disappearance thing, and then we can go back to the pyramid, because there's some things we didn't talk about on the pyramid thing.
All right.
So a U.S. Army investigator concluded he likely died in an encounter with a bear. That's back to the original guy that flew out there in the float plane and disappeared.
Okay, now I thought that was Sutherland.
Yes. Maybe. It could be. Maybe. But
that's the predation would be they found actually his head, so that tells me the critters did get to him.
Well, why would they say concluded likely he died with an encounter of a bear? If you find a skull and a bear ate you, I guarantee you'd have teeth marks, scratches, and crushed bones in your head all over the place. There would be no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
Eyewitnesses in a Discovery Channel documentary recounted mysterious UFO sightings in the area, describing triangular objects that define conventional aviation norms. Reports from experienced rescue workers investigating missing persons cases revealed encounters with phantom voices, confusion, and dizziness attributed to an unknown feature of the Alaskan wilderness. And there are literally hundreds of videos out there. And some are just amateur videos of people hiking through Alaska that encounter these things. Like they hear shit at night, they see things in daytime, they get dizzy, they get sick for unexplained reasons. And as soon as they turn around and go back, 100 yards, they feel better. UFO expert Debbie Ziegelmeyer suggested that the sparsely populated nature of Alaska makes it attractive to aliens. Paranormal investigator Johnny Enoch speculated on secret military involvement. While aliens are often blamed, cryptozoologist Cliff Barackman Cliff Barackman guy is from the Bigfoot show that ran for many, many years, probably still running, searching for Bigfoot or something, and they never actually find anything. Has proposed the presence of a local version of Bigfoot as the culprit behind the disappearances. So there you go.
Bottom line is we don't know.
Now this was a pretty crappy article, and that's the only one that I could actually copy and paste so I can read it off my computer. There's much more going on than what these articles describe. There's a fishing village up there that was completely abandoned because the fishermen that were working at this cannery, there was a cannery, and the people that were working at this cannery occasionally would disappear. A lot of them would never be found, or sometimes they'd be found in really strange places, like up in a tree, partially closed, and everybody knew what it was. And it got so bad that, originally the company hired a bunch of hunters just to kind of keep the area safe. Although the hunters never found anything, the killing still continued. And the village emptied out, and they finally abandoned it. The remains are still there, but they just moved out. And it was supposed to be prime fishing area. It still is, and the local natives don't even go near that area. They just completely circumvent it because of that. And they know what it is. They say it's a Sasquatch.
Now, is this in the same area where we're the Denali National Forest?
This is further down in the triangle, down towards
Juneau.
No, above Juneau, below Anchorage, in that area.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
So this pyramid thing, I've seen one article that I didn't print out either, but there's reports of pilots that fly over this area in Denali National Forest or National Park where their instruments go haywire. Their compass needles spin. A lot of the electrical systems start surging and circuit breakers pop. Aircrafts all have fuse circuit breakers, and they pop out and you push them back in if everything's okay. If not, you're big shit. But there's a lot of reports of that in that area. And then there's also, why secret military bases out there. Well, Alaska's got a ton of military bases. There's a Joint Air Force Army base, I think just west of Anchorage. There's bases all over Alaska for obvious reasons. I mean, who are we real close to up there?
Yeah. Back during the Cold War, that was, many considered that the Fulda Gap in Europe and the Bering Strait to be the two places where there was going to be trouble. So,
what about the Aleutian Islands?
Yeah.
So Alaska is tactically, Alaska is probably the most important state for the U.S. as far as having to protect it because it's really close to a lot of other places up there. So yes, could there be secret bases up in Alaska? Hell yeah. Why wouldn't there be? We've heard of HARP that's up there, and HARP's always been accused of trying to manipulate the weather, although they're saying they're just testing the ionosphere. That's going to be a lie. That's a whole different show, though. But back to the pyramid. If this pyramid is up there, if it is underground, the question, what they're saying, it's thousands and thousands of years old, and obviously wasn't built by humans. If it was a long, long time ago. Like, I think they said 30,000 years ago. The second thing they're saying about this pyramid, there was two people that came forth, and they're sons of their dad, their fathers. One of them was a scientist that was assigned to work out there in that area, and he also talked to Linda Moulton. And I don't know if it was if she verified this story 100% or not, but apparently this guy, he was a military. He did something important in the military. He retired. When he got out, he tinkered around with electronics and stuff like that. And the military picked him back up and employed him to go out to this area where this big white spot is on the map. And he went out there in a blacked out bus with a bunch of other people.
Why? Why would the military send him out there? Because they didn't know what was there?
To study this thing. Yeah, apparently to study. So what they're saying is this guy and a bunch of other people were in a bus, and they went out there to this area, and it was just a flat, open area with a little building above ground. Didn't look like there was much going on, but once you got inside the building, there was an elevator shaft that went down quite a ways, and once they got to the bottom, you could clearly see the pyramid. It was made out of some kind of black stone, black rock, and they had tunneled all around this pyramid, so they were studying this pyramid because it was emitting electricity, and they said they was putting off enough electricity to power an entire country. I mean, you could power. They said the way they quoted it is that you could power all of Canada with the electricity this thing was putting off.
Wow!
And they were trying to figure out why it's doing that and all that kind of stuff. So this guy had died. I mean, he came out. He worked on this thing for a while. Came out and then got some kind of cancer and died. So we can't really prove if that's really a true story or not. Then there's another story of a helicopter pilot that was flying from a nearby base that had to fly equipment out there one day, and while he was flying the equipment out there, he had a friend that was also in the military, but he didn't have the clearance to go out there. And this is where it's questionable again. He goes, this helicopter pilot would fly out there, I think every other week or something, and just drop off boxes or whatever, tools, supplies. And he never actually, parked the helicopter and got out. He would just land, keep the engines running. They would unload the stuff and they'd send him packing. So his other friend that never got out there, he questioned him. He goes, dude, what are you doing out there anyway? And he goes, you wouldn't believe it if I told you. He goes, there's a base out there. And I was like, nah, there's no base out there. And he goes, come with me. Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to care. Just come with me. So on his next mission to fly supplies out there, he's got an old Huey helicopter. He jumps in the co-pilot seat, and they fly out there. And on the way out there, he tells them, there's something going to happen within a 5-mile radius of this base, and I don't want you to freak out. And the guy's like, what? And he goes, well, alarms and sirens are going to start going off in this helicopter. There's going to be fuses popping, and our radio's not going to work. And the guy was doubtful at first. He goes, really? And he goes, yeah. And sure enough, when they got within 5 miles, they lost all radio communication. They were flying VFR, or visual flight rule, keep the ground in sight, type flying. And he says alarms and their buzzers were going off in the helicopter. And the guy goes, don't worry, the engines never quit. Just everything electrical on this dashboard seems to not like what we're flying into. And they fly over, and where this one little outbuilding is, they land. 2-3 guys come out. They unload several boxes. He was instructing, always keep the engine running. They unload those 3 boxes, and he's told to go back. And as he lifts off and turns around and goes back, the same thing happens. All the equipment is still crazy. And once they get within this 5-mile perimeter, everything starts going back to normal again. Now, the guy he had with him is completely confused by it. And he's like, what the heck just happened? And the pilot taps his headphones, and he goes like, don't talk about this right now. Presumably because maybe somebody's listening. And later on that evening, they meet up at a pub. And he goes, you got to tell me what the hell's going on. He goes, I've been flying stuff out here for months now, and I don't know where it's all going. Apparently it's going underground because the building on top of the ground is way too small for all the shit that's out here. And there's way too many people that appear out of nowhere when I land there. There must be an underground base there. That's all this helicopter pilot knew. He didn't know anything else. He just knew something was very shady about the whole situation. Now, on the same token, I have to ask myself this. There's an underground base. Wouldn't you just hire a guy that has the top clearance, that works at that base, to fly your stuff back and forth? That way you wouldn't have to worry about it?
Well, I'll take it a step further. If this was such a secret base, wouldn't somebody who came to the helicopter to unload it question who's the guy in the other seat? He ain't supposed to be here. So,
yeah.
I have an issue with that up front, because an extra person out there, if they're trying to keep it quiet, having an extra person on that bird is going to mean there's an extra set of eyes watching what's going on, and then another mouth to talk about it.
But the logic behind what the military does sometimes confuses everybody. Because if you look at the Bob Lazar story, he worked at Area 51. I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Lazar.
Oh yeah.
But they hired him because he had a degree in I can't remember what he had a degree, but he was an educated person, scientist in the private sector. He was smart enough to install a jet engine on his freaking car privately at home. He lived in Los Alamos, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when he first came out with his story, the reason he came out with his story, and he was non-military. He was put into a place supposedly because of his knowledge and his skill set, but he was also threatened when he tried to expose what was going on there. And all of the things he said because he figured, his thought was that if he made it public and invited the media to know what he knows, he would be safe, because he was concerned about them killing him, because they raided his house. They supposedly interfered with his marriage. There was random calls made to his wife saying, your husband's not working on the base. He's actually out cheating on you in Las Vegas. And it's still just doubt, reasonable doubt. And all these people, like, this guy's full of shit. He's been in Las Vegas having an affair.
But why would they do that to Bob Lazar if he wasn't talking, if he was
He
fulfilling
was
his
he
agreement.
well, he was talking. He screwed up. He took two of his friends out to the edge of the base because he supposedly touched, seen, and worked on part as well. It was all
Right,
compartmentalized. But he said he walked past a hangar and seen a triangular shaped aircraft in there. And he
right.
said every night this stupid thing would come out and do crazy crap in the sky. And like a dummy, he invited two friends because he's a civilian. He took two friends out to the corner of the perimeter, kind of, and he said, "You
Mhm.
guys aren't going to believe this crap. You got to check this out." And sure enough, the testing had begun, and this thing was out there raising hell in the sky. Well, he basically breached the contract and security, and he was
Sure.
targeted from that point on. Now, everybody thought Bob Lazarus is full of shit, and he's trying to get attention because not only did they erase all his records, it took 10 years to find out that he actually did go to a school and have a college degree because every school that he claimed he went to had no record of him. Like, we don't remember him. And then accidentally, some investigators found documents that they didn't get to that proved that he was there. So that was like, oh, wow, that's some pretty deep shit. So, and he was proven right in so many things. There's an element he described. I can't remember, some weird element, something, that didn't exist at the time or anybody even thought of that now exists. The retina scanning technology didn't exist back then. When he came out on the interview with Art Bell and said they had
Right.
retina scanning technology, it was
Mhm.
like, wow, what are they reading an eyeball? Nobody knew anything about retina scanning. Now it's not that rare. Your phone does it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was describing a security doors where you put your handprint on the whole door and
Yeah.
it would read the
Biometrics.
spaces between your knuckles and stuff because
Yeah.
everybody's got different spacing. It wasn't a fingerprint reader. And back when he did this, like in 1980 something on the show, when he came out with all this information, and people were like, this sounds way too, sci-fi. This is Star Trek stuff. You're full of shit. All this stuff had been proven right.
You're right. There's a bunch of stuff that he talked about that was proven right, but I got to go back to the simple human element here. Why would he take two civilians, friends of his, to a spot that can be seen, and not being assured that they wouldn't run their mouths? I mean, obviously the government found out he did it. If things were that tight, why would the guy do something as stupid as that?
I think there's an easy answer for that. There's an old saying,
Okay.
happiness isn't real unless it's shared. The most loneliest job in the world's got to be a CIA spook. You're this badass who gets to travel the world, basically has a license to kill and do whatever he wants, but you can't tell anybody, not even your parents. Nobody knows what you do. It means nothing then. I mean, who are you going to impress? Your girlfriend? You can't tell anything. Nobody knows. And I'm sure him being a civilian, just a nerd, he was a nerdy civilian guy.
Yeah.
Was put in a situation and he goes, I got to get this off my chest. I seen freaking UFO. It's real. I can see that happening.
And your point's well taken. I mean, you and I, with our training, we just know to keep our mouths shut and, keep things that are confidential, confidential. I mean, I couldn't imagine if I was in his position. Hey, Ike, you want to come see some UFOs? That just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me. Um,
It's kind of
and
like police officers who off duty carry their badge so people can see it or got their firearm exposed to show people off duty, like, look, I'm a cop,
yeah,
because otherwise it's not legit. Or the firefighter walking around with walkie-talkie all day long, even though they're off duty and haven't worked in 2 days, but yet they're sitting in a restaurant with their little walkie-talkie right there, like, pretending they're on call. You see that all
okay.
the time.
How do you explain the guy delivering the goods in the helicopter? I mean, if he was flying stuff out there, his boss, his CEO, his squadron, whatever, had to have said, or he had to have been briefed that this is confidential. You keep your trap shut. You never talk about going out there. And he takes somebody with him. I,
That would
I,
be a huge, huge breach. I mean, yeah, terrible.
I've got, I have more problem with that than I do the Lazar story of taking his buddies out to watch the triangular shaped UFO fly. That's just beyond me.
Unless,
Oh,
unless it was so routine, because everybody just expects his military to be this well-oiled, straight to the book functioning government entity, and the key word is government here. You enter the word government into anything, and straight functioning is out of the window. It's bureaucratic. It's ridiculous. Everybody's trying to step on everybody's dick. Everybody's trying to prove how important they are to the other person.
Yeah.
So military efficiency is not a real thing, just like law enforcement efficiency is not a real thing. Any government entity is not a real freaking thing. It's just not
humans are
structured.
involved. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as structured as you think. So if they've been flying, if there's an underground base, apparently shit's been going out there for a long time. I mean, you don't build a base out of nowhere. That's another question that came up. How do you build an underground base without anybody knowing? Once again, we talked about airplanes flying around in Alaska constantly. Wouldn't you be just a tad bit suspicious about what's going on?
Well, let's go back to the Chinese explosion that started this whole mess, and the vibration revealing that big pyramid in Alaska. Okay, you're blowing up a nuclear weapon underground to contain the fallout. I get that. But what else are you doing? You're clearing out a whole lot of land underneath.
Yeah. It may just be smoke and mirrors. Maybe the Chinese didn't do a damn thing, and maybe it was all of them in Alaska that did it themselves. Underground, and the thing about underground bases, those rumors have been around forever. I mean, we got one out here, the Dulce underground facility that's never been found.
Oh, Cheyenne Mountain is underground. I mean,
underground boring machines, how'd they build a tunnel between France and England? I mean, there's the technology's there. And even back in the 80s, when I lived on the other side of mountain range here, there always was a rumor that because we have Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, and that was a nuclear storage facility for the longest time, up until like the 80s and 90s. And there was always a rumor, everybody knew it, there was an underground tunnel highway that went south from Albuquerque towards White Sands Missile Range, which is a pretty good stretch, all in all, probably 80 miles or 70 miles. But it was like common knowledge. And the way that knowledge came out is a lot of these Air Force people that worked there would just tell you, there's an underground tunnel out there. And everybody thought, yeah, right. Well, just recently, within the last 10 years, they find out that an entire mountain on the east side of Albuquerque is hollowed out. It is completely, and their defenses is still up. I mean, it's still part of the Kirtland Air Force Base, and it's part of DOE now. But the entire mountain is hollowed out. And everybody knew it, but you tell people, and even the Air Force guys that come out of service after a while, and they tell people, and I think the military just says, say whatever you want. They either believe you or they don't. No, it's not going to change anything.
I do think that's a huge part of it. Yeah, go ahead and talk about it, because nobody's going to believe you. We'll deny it, and you can't prove it, so you're going to look like a fool. So I get that, and I don't deny for a second that the government doesn't tell us everything. And there's a myriad of different reasons for it, everything from national security to whatever reason. Let me throw this out to you, and this just popped into my head. Have you been watching the show The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch at all?
Not the new season. I don't get it until you all get done with it, and then we get it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Well, probably the season you're in now, or the season just before that, do you remember them boring into the side of the mountain and it hitting something that was almost going straight up? Wait a minute, straight up? Maybe straight down? In that same mountain?
Could be the same thing.
Yeah, I did that. I just can't. Go ahead.
Here's my thoughts on government secrets. We all know it's a fact. There's a black budget, and a black budget gets dealt out to certain government agencies, NSA, CIA, and they basically do not have to report what happens with that money. There's no taxes spent on that money. There's nothing. That money is for you, for national security. You do what you got to do with it, whether it's buying off Contras, whether it's training freaking drug runners in South America, whether it's whatever it is, it's designed to be top secret. Not even the president has knowledge of it. And the reason the president doesn't have knowledge of it is because he's an elected official. Well, he's an elected official. He may not be president in 4 years. How would you like to have an ex-con president, 6 years after he'd been in office, spilling top military secrets now? So even presidents aren't privy to black budget, top secret information. Somebody said a long time ago, I don't remember who it was, but the true people that run the country, the true masters of the world, are scientists. Without scientists, nothing happens. They get the money from the budgets. They get their grants. They basically investigate and tell you how to do things and not to do things. And the next in line would be the generals. That's why generals are 180 years old. They're in there forever. They'd probably be next in line to know top secrets, and they would know how to keep a secret. Other than that, nobody knows. Nobody knows. So if there's stuff underground, the truth would never come out. These top scientists, like Bob Lazar was an oddity because he was just a nerd that got sucked into a situation that he overwhelmed him. But there's scientists out there that are 100% invested in what they're doing. And not only are they invested, they're threatened with, extermination to your entire household if you spill the beans.
Okay, so let's then go back to the missing people out there. How do you think that they're connected? They stumble across something? Do the experiments create these creatures that do harm? Are they connected with aliens that are,
I think there could be a whole combination of this, a smorgasbord of ones they could stumble into military secrets, black budget type secrets, where it would behoove the military just to get rid of you. You're a lone hiker out there, and it's much easier to say that a bear ate you and not have to worry about what you stumbled into, because they're not going to absorb you and make you part of their group. That's not going to happen.
No, come on in. Come on, be part of the
promise
gang.
You won't tell. Promise you won't tell. No, it'd probably be much easier just to get rid of you. And that's another thing about the black budget things. They employ a lot of private security. And private security can do whatever the heck they want. I mean, the camo dudes on Area 51, you see them with no insignia on their uniforms. They're driving, just white Ford pickup trucks. They're private hired security. And the reason they hire private security, because private security can really violate your civil rights. They're private security. You have to be a government employee. You may be considered an actor for the government or contracted to the government. Still, you're private security. So that's one thing. And two, maybe they are protecting things that we shouldn't be knowing about. Maybe they are protecting a Sasquatch or an entity or a bilateral world or some spirit world or UFOs or aliens or something. Maybe they're out there protecting, working hand in hand with them or working for them. Maybe they are the masters and they hired you, the military, to keep this area safe. They said, look, you all need to keep the rest of this population out of here, or it's not going to be a good day for anybody.
Well, I go back to Skinwalker Ranch. Now, of course, that's a different situation. There's no security out there. They got a couple different groups that have tried to...
they got two security guys out there that are armed heavily.
Yeah, they are. I've noticed some of the gear they're carrying.
Claim to be ex-cops, but they're not cops anymore, so...
Well, I don't think Dragon is a cop, but the other guy.
The other guy.
Was a sheriff's deputy. Yeah. But they're trying to expose stuff. Now, of course, you can always use the argument they're trying to expose it by actually covering it up, or actually covering it up by trying to expose it, however you want to put it. But I guess what I'm getting at, a lot of what you're talking about here, with the exception of the missing people, man, that sounds like that same spot, but it's it's a non-military area. Now, the area in Denali where this pyramid is said to be, that's not cornered off by the military, is it? I mean, there's no fences or anything up.
No, but people on Google Maps have found scars in the earth that indicate there used to be an airfield there at one point, that there used to be a building there. There's still outlines of buildings. So something was there at that location, exactly where they were saying. That's what prompted that guy to fly out there and get dropped off. And not because he found it, because other people found it and he wanted to follow up on it. I don't know what he was going to do when he found it.
I would love to know of the, 2,200 people a year that disappear in this area. How many have disappeared right there? And I don't know that but I don't know that we'll ever really know the amount. But
it's like we talked in the show in the past. So many people disappear in these protected national forests. It can't all just be people just wandering off the trail and dying of dehydration. Come on. Most of these people that head out to these places are pretty well prepared. They're outdoorsy people. They're hikers. They're hunters. Then they're not just coming out of a freaking New York skyscraper getting dropped off in an alley. These people are prepared. Most of them are. Yet they still disappear. That shouldn't happen that easily.
Yeah.
They're not all suicides of predation. If there was that many bears killing people, we wouldn't have any more bears left. We would have exterminated them just like buffaloes and anything else that poses a threat to humanity. They'd be long
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. And getting back to the government covering some stuff up someday, I would love to share with you, and maybe this show we could do at another time. You've heard of Flight 19, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the group of Avengers that left out of Fort Lauderdale, the Bermuda Triangle, since we're talking about the Alaska Triangle. Interesting stuff there that includes folks that are supposed to be gone, but giving an indication they're still around. I'll just put that tease out there a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, is that part of a government cover-up? And is that what we have going here? Or do we have just people that get lost in that huge wilderness because they're unprepared? But there's so many people that do get lost and they are prepared.
And there's so many, there's
forth.
literally thousands and thousands and thousands of stories of Sasquatch sightings, wormhole sightings, portal sightings, anomalies in the sky, in the ground. And these people almost disappeared, but had enough sense to turn around and run the other way. And then who do you tell? You go to the police department, say, I was hiking on this trail and I seen the shimmery portal and heard all sounds stopped and I was scared to death. The local sheriff's department goes, yeah, okay. You're going to do a report?
Pat you down for mushrooms or something.
yeah, you got to lay off the meth, dude. So who do you report? So it probably happens a heck of a lot more than it's probably something that happens routinely. And probably just a small percentage of the people actually get abducted or disappear. Mm-hmm. It just happens to all kinds of people. It's happened to me hiking. So there's stuff out there that we probably aren't allowed to know. And I'm thinking the government knows. The black budget people know. But they're keeping it from us because it could change the paradigm of humanity, I think. It would just change everything. Everything we've been taught, everything in school we've been taught, our parents taught us and their parents taught us. It could all be just a big lie. If we're living in a simulation or anything like that, everything, it's nothing.
God, the Matrix, that's a whole other topic there. Yeah, and I've talked to folks in government service that have said, we do this to protect, but the other side of the fence is, well, we have a right to know. And where does that meet? Where does the government, and I do believe I'm going to get in trouble for this one, but there are some things the government's got to keep secret for the best of, for the betterment of.
Absolutely.
So I do agree with that.
Certain things people shouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Certain, where our military armor or stockpiles are, stuff like that. How to arm a nuclear weapon. And it's probably don't need to know. Who needs to know that?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yep.
Other things the government keeps from us on purpose because like the Freedom of Information Act, you can get their information. Everything's so heavily redacted that the only thing left is the date on top. Yep. There's your freedom of information. So I think they keep a lot of secrets and stuff. There was this is probably an episode in itself. The free energy people. There's been so many patents filed since the 1900s on free energy devices. Everything from running on water to and the majority of those people ended up dying mysteriously soon after filing their patents.
Mm-hmm.
And
that might have more to do with the money than with the public good, but.
The money, and also, but when you're messing things with the oil industry fuels a lot of nations. That money.
That's money.
Egypt wouldn't be this powerful. Egypt and the EAU wouldn't be the EAU if it wasn't for oil. So there's a lot of interest there.
Yeah, I agree. So government's conspiracies have a way of perpetuating their own life by doing stuff like that, by keeping secrets, because it all has to do with money and power. Don't forget that word power.
And the good thing, and people say, well, people are fallible and nobody can keep a secret. It's like I said earlier, if you tell a secret, who's going to believe you? And two is the government has this really powerful tool, and it's just called treason. And just like when you enter a military installation and it says, use of deadly force authorized. As a police officer, did you ever, you got use of force, use of deadly force is authorized for you, Mr. Larry, go for it. No, but in a military installation, it's authorized. I mean, deadly force. You know, if you're in there and you shouldn't be in there, they can literally shoot you. And they say, "Didn't you read the sign?" You know,
Yeah.
but I was just trespassing. I was unarmed. Nobody cares. You entered, and use of force is authorized. So they have a lot of authority when it comes to that. And then the whole Treason Act. I mean, I remember reading into the Treason Act many years ago. It's insane. I mean, it's still one of the criminal charges that has the death penalty
Yeah,
in America.
they can do you over that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for committing treason, you can actually be killed. I'm like, wow. So if they hold that over your head, if you're one of those nerdy scientists, you know, who doesn't have any military training, you're not gung ho. You're just a guy with good grades who got suckered into doing a really crappy job in a compartment in a small little place in a building, who's just reading charts and really don't know what the hell's going on. And they tell you, if you tell anybody about reading those charts, you know, things could end badly for you. Not just for you, but for your wife, your dog, your kids, everybody. So keep
Your
your mouth shut.
grandkids,
Yeah. You don't keep your mouth shut. Lonely life. Now, can you imagine how sad it would be if you're in Florida right now and you walk into this garage and there's an actual small UFO parked in this garage and it's buzzing and glowing, it's floating, nothing's holding it up. And they tell you, if you tell anybody, you and everybody you know is going to die. So you have this knowledge in your head, like, wow, there's something really, you know, there's something going on. There's more to this than meets the eye, but I can't tell anybody.
You know, there's so many stories out there, and people say that's a bunch of BS. Nobody would believe you. Yet there are so many things that we see in movies that have ended up coming true. I mean, technology-wise, they do so many movies about people disappearing because they run their mouths. Maybe
And is it conditioning?
Maybe it's based on some truth.
Yeah, is it the way of conditioning you? You know, like the whole UFO thing. You know, when was when Orson Welles did his UFO thing, the whole world panicked. People jumped out of buildings. You know, all because the news guy on the radio says, "Hey, we've been invaded."
And isn't that a great motivation for saying we got to keep this stuff quiet because look what happened last time?
Yeah.
So
and now if somebody got on the radio and said, "Hey, we've been invaded," what would happen? Everybody grabbed a cell phone, run outside, like, where? I got to see where they're at.
So, but interesting. We've got an interesting story here because we've got some paranormal stuff. We've got people disappearing in an area that some anomaly was seen by somebody underground, or this is quite an interesting story.
It's interesting, and like I said, if you want to learn more about it, just Google dark pyramid or black pyramid in Alaska, because there's literally, like I said, I didn't know this, but there's tons of stories out there, and there's some of the stuff I left out because it's a little too flowery. I mean, some of these people writing these things, you can clearly tell they're just writing to be writing, filling space. But behind every story, there's a little bit of truth, and
that's my whole point. There's some truth here somewhere, and that's why we talk about this stuff, is to get you folks thinking, get you folks to expand your horizons, and maybe somebody out there has an answer.
Maybe you've been to Alaska, to that place. Real quick, like before we end this, I have a friend, an acquaintance. Really? I have an acquaintance. You notice I retracted friend right away.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Liar. But an acquaintance who got into flying a paramotor, paragliding like I do. Mm-hmm. He got into it because he's a amateur prospector, and he was his idea in his head was he's going to get a paraglider or paramotor and go up to Alaska and fly out into the bush country and do some prospecting. And that's exactly what he did. With minimal training, he buys himself a glider and a paramotor, and I can't remember where he launched from, but it was somewhere in the Denali area also. And he said he flew a couple hours, which is about the extent of your fuel. And to have enough fuel to come back, he carried extra fuel. And he decides to land. And once he landed, he realized there's no way in hell he can take off from that area. It's rocky. It's full of thorny trees and bushes and stuff. And he kind of just, and I've done this myself flying, except for I wasn't in the middle of nowhere. But he landed in a place you couldn't launch from because it requires space to launch those things. So when he landed, initially he didn't think about taking back off again. He starts prospecting in this little stream and stuff. At the end of the day, he camps out. Next morning he says, there's no way I can get out of here. And I think he had one launch attempt and ended up breaking lines on his wing. His wing didn't come up right, and it snagged, and he broke some lines. Now he's screwed. He hiked out 4 days, I think. He abandoned everything. He abandoned his equipment, his prospecting stuff, his shovels, his pans, everything. All he grabbed was part of the wing. He cut the wing in half because he didn't have enough clothes with him because you can only carry so much weight on a paraglider. So he cut the wing in half and used it as kind of like a poncho type thing in a little bit of water and some granola bars, he said, and he started hiking. He didn't realize it was going to take that long to get out. It took him, I think he said 4.5 days. He was ready to die. He said he was actually had visions of dying. He said the mosquitoes were eating him up. He said he thanked God that he brought that wing because at night he would just lean up against the rock and wrap himself up in that wing to keep the mosquitoes from eating. So the mosquitoes were just unbearable. And he said he'd get the streams that he couldn't cross and he'd have to go way up or way down to cross the stream. And about 4.5 days later, he was out of food 3 days ago, dying of thirst because there was no water at the last stretch. He said he just stumbles out onto the friggin' highway. He came across the highway and he just stumbles out and lays down on the road. And he goes like in a little while, a car came by and picked him up. And, he survived, obviously. I said, man, you need to write a book about this story. I mean, this is an amazing story. But that's how quick you can get in trouble.
But you know what? You just answered my question about why a helicopter pilot would bring a passenger into a secured area and not think about it, or a guy would bring civilian friends to watch a UFO fly around. I guess people just don't think sometimes.
No, they have a very adventurous spirit, and it sounds better in their head than practical, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy was within probably 1 day of dying. He said he had already given up. He said when he hiked out onto this highway, he was ready in just zombie mode. He was like, I'm going to fall over and just stay here. That's it. He had already made peace with everything, said goodbye to everybody, he said. And I'm like, you got to write a book about this. This is amazing. That would make an amazing little movie.
The only thing that would make it better is if while he was out there, he found a black pyramid.
Yeah. Or a giant gold nugget.
Or a giant gold nugget. Or a Sasquatch.
Or he tripped over a pyramid rock, found a nugget, and then got eaten by a Sasquatch. That would make
there you go. But we're making fun of a guy that had a traumatic story, but it does show that people just sometimes don't plan. They don't think ahead. So
yeah, he thought he had it completely planned out, and it just took one little oops, and that plan went to shit really fast.
Yeah.
But he didn't disappear. And I asked him, did you ever go back to retrieve your equipment? He goes, nope. He said it would cost me more to go out there to retrieve my equipment. He goes, I just donated it to the wilderness. So I'm like, wow, $6,000-$7,000 motor laying out there.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys got something out of this story. I mean, we kind of skipped around a whole lot on this because it's that kind of story. But if you've never heard of it, maybe if you never heard of this thing, you can look into it a little further. If that kind of stuff interests you, there's definitely maybe something to this.
Yep.
Anything to go? Anything else, Larry?
No, just looking forward to chatting with you again. We got a couple other great stories coming up. So hope you come back and join us for some of these other mysterious events of missing people and Sasquatches and everything else.
More paranormal type disappearances, I'm hoping, because mysterious, because I don't want this to turn into a 411 channel. There's really one out there. But we try to get a little bit of paranormal. The paranormal in this pyramid story is obviously the mysterious Alaska Triangle and the pyramid in the ground. I mean, that's weird. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. Check us out. I have not been uploading on Spotify because we're just not getting a whole lot of hits on Spotify. And, it takes forever to upload on Spotify for me. But like, subscribe, say something in the comments, please.
Hi to Gary, our friend Gary in the Isle of Wight in England, and Chris up in Durham, England, and everybody else out there. I know I didn't get everybody, but thanks for those that stay by.
Closet watchers. I call them closet watchers. They don't want to be identified. Those might be black budget military people, and they watch us, and they just don't want their superiors to find out. So,
or Or maybe they're going to make a visit to us. Who knows?
Yeah, most likely. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Bye. Say bye, Larry.
Bye.